Amber, before we start on this conversation, I have to acknowledge two pieces so that we can really bring some power to this conversation.
Okay.
The first is I had not noticed, but the system actually kicked back to me that a couple of episodes ago, we hit our 50th episode.
Oh, yeah.
And the system actually kicked back. Most podcasts fail within their first 10 to 12 episodes. You've made it to 50.
Wow.
Thank you, AI.
Congratulations to us.
Congrats. But it harkened back to me, which was the very, very first topic. Do you remember our very, very first topic?
No.
Our very, very first topic, we've actually done twice in those 50 episodes.
Okay.
Because somewhere around episode 25, we revisited it. Our very first episode, which we recorded in November of 2024,
Right. That sounds
was
right.
us noticing the beginnings of a pushback against DEI.
Oh my gosh. Was that our first episode?
That was our first episode. And then about a year later,
We talked about it.
we brought a follow-on. Like,
Right.
we noticed there was a beginning to a push.
Right.
And then, oh my word, we never saw this much push coming.
Right.
And that brings us to today's feisty manifesto, which is
Number 7, I don't tolerate performative DEI.
and here we are again. I love it.
Well, it's interesting, like in writing these 10 things that just seem to help. That it's the journey that I've been on to figure out what I mean when I say feisty. And it's interesting. I hadn't recalled that our first conversation that we ever recorded was about DEI or EDI or however you want to describe it. But I mean, it's apropos because it's something I'm really passionate about. At the same time, the world has shifted so much since November of 2024, and what we were glimpsing then, we have seen just be magnified on such a large scale. And of course, now, looking at, spring of 2026, we're at war in many places in the world in new ways that we wouldn't have even been able to predict at the beginning of 2026. And we continue, at least here, I experience on Canadian soil, we're still fighting each other about whether including others and seeking out and finding the benefit of diversity is valid or not. It's shocking to me because it's just the evidence of how much we benefit from one another when we work together is so huge, and yet people don't. It's not what we feel as humans. It feels like our emotions and the data don't match. And I, sometimes I ask myself, like, why? What's going on? And I'm not a good example maybe anymore because I am sold down this river, way down this river. And I was born and raised in a very conservative, traditional family environment. It was highly religious, and there were very clear black and white rights and wrongs. So this was not a space where diversity was ever allowed or valued. I remember being that small child, going to church on Sunday and being put in a Sunday school class. And I was the one asking questions, poking at, truths that I didn't understand. And instead of creating collaborative conversation, I was just put outside. I just remember being asked to sit outside the Sunday school classroom on the floor because I was a disruptive, well, I would use the word toxic now, but they wouldn't have said it then. But I was a disruptor. I was an agitator. I was toxic to there is a right and wrong. And it was funny because I never really saw myself as someone who was happy in the gray or the, in between. And yet I have grown so comfortable with a lack of certainty. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I'm so convinced that our greatest power that we possess as humans is our ability to share with one another, to collaborate with one another, and to leverage each other's unique points of view. So I don't really even talk about DEI anymore. It's interesting as I'm reflecting on in the Feisty Manifesto talking about DEI, like I don't even know if it's relevant for DEI to be the right term to use anymore, because it feels like the trend of that we've moved away from. So really what I'm just always wanting to talk about is difference is power. Our differences is really powerful. And I think it's important for us to continue to think about what makes us uniquely human, particularly in this age of technology and development. You know, you and I were having a conversation recently about how we're training our own AIs in order to best support us, to give us, the framework for writings, for teachings, for whatever we're working on. And I think like we're trying to leverage the tools that we have in this day and age in 2026 to improve upon our what? Well, our delivery, not necessarily the way we think, but to improve upon some of the ways we may present the material, right? And I just think, so what are we saying? That we would allow that AI to perform on our behalf? No. It's synergy. It's working together. It's bringing its deep ability to research very quickly into giving us more opportunity to see different things and to learn things and then integrate that into our learning. And I think even as we integrate with technology, like I'm finding we're experiencing opportunity to do things differently there. So why are we, some of us, so eager to do that, but not with our neighbor who, shares a desk at work? Because I don't know, because they see the world differently. And I think it's more complex. Thankfully I can type a couple of words in and my AI chatbot can give me data. I don't have to build a relationship and create rapport and look for ways for them to respect and trust me and then ask them their opinion and believe that they'll tell me the truth. Is that really what's at play? Is that the stopgap for most of us that still to this day have a hard time leveraging our differences with humans?
Well, I think you bring up a really good point there. And I just think this is how I'll say it. I'm curious how you'll respond to it, which is I think there's a great comfort in homogeneous thinking.
Mm.
And I just come back to, even if I was looking at it just from the version of being someone who's done technology. So if we're talking about IT technicians have a homogeneous way of looking at users.
Right.
They're dumb. Like, let's just start with that simple. Like, I
Well,
mean,
you can say that. This is not a space that I live in, but I know
I'm
this
just
is a
simply
space you've worked
saying,
in.
when all the techs get together and we talk about those crazy people who are using computers, like it's almost like we all think of them as 5-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
What is a 5-year-old going to do when it's going to touch its computer? Well, it's going to mash on the keyboard, and then it's going to hit things, and then it's not going to work, and then they're going to wonder why. But that homogeneous thinking, and this is, you nailed it, is easy. It's far harder when we go, oh no, there's complex people who are using complex tools in complex ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I know every once in a while in my workplace, I'll need a technician and they'll come down and they'll treat me like I'm 5. And they know what I've done for a living and they'll ask me what I've done. And it's a pretty lengthy list of things I've done, but it's easier to treat homogeneously. It's hard to get to know who someone is. You got to create that rapport, which again, depending on the differences, may be easy or not easy. In the military, homogeneous thinking is rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
If you think differently, you're
out.
Excluded. Yeah, you're excluded from conversations.
Yeah.
What do you mean you're going to think differently? And I just come back to the systems that have been reinforcing this. I was looking at a thing that an HR person was putting out the other day, and they were talking about business practices in the 80s. And it was like, if you worked at a company and it was owned by a white male Harvard graduate, and you were not a white male Harvard graduate, you didn't crack that office. That C-suite, that C-suite was only open for white male Harvard graduates. You could have graduated from Stanford.
Didn't matter.
You're not making it in the room.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things I thought was really interesting, that whatever we call the clique is the hard thing to break out of.
Right.
As I talk about that, because I
Well, and
really like that article.
but like you said, and those environments create comfort, and I think, I mean, comfort is shouldn't be overlooked, because as humans, we do need comfort. Comfort can create, safety. And for a lot of individuals and for a lot of people, that, is particularly when we're leading groups, we do want environments where people feel safe. Because what we know now is people who feel safe, like physically, emotionally, and, even in a work environment where they feel safe to try something and fail and know that they're not going to lose their job, they will actually try more. They will tend to, um, seek out solutions faster, and there will be, an ability to exercise that freedom and also accomplish more innovation. This is provable. So comfort shouldn't just be overlooked. The challenge is that when that comfort creates isolation, and, like I said, like, the world in 2026 is an incredibly different place than it was in 2025 at a global level, the way we're interacting with one another. And I think, like, the alienation from one another is where the destruction is happening.
Mhm.
So it's not that we don't value and need comfort. It's that we need to question, well, where's that comfort coming from in that room? And is the comfort coming from a few of us insulating ourselves to other people's differences and marginalizing? When I'm teaching, developing an interest holder register. So, in a project environment where you're like, okay, we've got to capture all of our interest holders so we can build rapport and relationship with them. I always encourage the use of, like, idiosyncrasies as an important aspect of things to capture. But oftentimes humans like to capture other humans' idiosyncrasies to make fun of them, to create division, to marginalize. And I think that's probably a very normal human thing. This is where we need to transcend that sort of pettiness and go, wait a minute. The way my interest holder sees the world, however different it may be from how I see the world, that gives me a unique idea of how they may view aspects of the project. And if ultimately their goal and my goal is project success, that's not that I win or that they win, it's that the project wins, then we need to think about, it's not that, oh, they're wrong. No, it's they're different. And how does their difference create a different framework for them to see things from? And we leverage each other's differences in an interest holder kind of engagement environment, because this helps us build genuine, truthful, honest relationship. It creates mutual respect. And, in a work environment, when you can come in and say, like, I don't agree with you, and have that not become the end of the conversation, that's incredibly powerful. And I know from my own experience, when you have a project team that does not agree, and everyone has the opportunity to share their unique perspective, those conversations about, now what should we do now that everyone's voiced what they see, those conversations and those decisions made out of that collaborative space, those decisions are infinitely better because they balance all these other perspectives. It's like me saying, well, I'm the project manager, so we're going to do it my way. Oh, great. Well, Amber's way, I'll tell you right now, it's not the right way. It's Amber's way. Sometimes Amber's way might be right. Other times it's going to be wrong. Other times it's going to be more complex. Other times it's going to be simpler. It's Amber's way. It's just one way. And Martin's way. Martin's way is not going to be right. It's not going to be wrong. It's going to be whatever based on the context and the situation. Now, you sharing your way, me sharing my way, and us talking to each other about it, picking each other's ways apart, suggesting, augmenting. And, with two people that sometimes can get polarizing. So what do? We bring in a third. Hey, third party, here's what we're thinking. What do you see? All of a sudden, we can see way more.
Yeah.
And the broader perspective lends itself for a riper decision-making environment. And what I really want to stress about I do not perform or do not tolerate performative DEI is that organizations who are just checking boxes to make sure they have diversity, that is not the work. That's performative. That's a box checking activity. That's to help insurance and legal challenges be navigated. That doesn't actually create wiser work environments. What's wiser is now that you've done that, now that you've performed those requirements by bringing a diverse group of people in, and you haven't thought about they're all from Harvard, so they're in. No, you consider all the places, or even better, you look at people as what their interests, what their gifts and skills are, and you accept them not based on their resume, but what you can learn about them. You bring all of those people together, and then you allow that environment to build trust, mutual respect, and create innovation. That's the work of leveraging diversity. It's not about performance, it's about transformation. It's about transforming our work environments so that we see difference and we're not afraid to see the difference. And we also are curious about the difference. One of the most powerful things that I have often recommended to individuals who are struggling with this is I will say, well, what's the last cultural event you attended? And oftentimes the clients that I'm talking to, they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, what sort of cultural events do you go to? Well, I mean, I like sports. And I'm like, great. So when you went to those sports, like what sort of groups of people are you with in those environments? And very often, individuals who are struggling with leveraging difference in others are people who have insulated their entire lives to just what makes them comfortable. Which means if you have never, and I started out as a chef, so let's go to food. Food is an incredible opportunity for us to value difference. If you have never eaten food outside of your own kind of comfort, there are a lot of other cultures and a lot of other ethnic foods whereby which you just would say, oh, I don't like that. Meaning, have you ever tried it? No, but you won't because it's outside of your comfort zone. Um, Food is an very accessible way for us to leverage and start to value difference. We see this like, the sensation of, I always like to give the example of bubble tea. Like, what in the world? Whoever came up with something like that? Globules of tapioca starch that you suck up with a big wide straw with tea and sugar. And I mean, it's an unbelievably unique culinary beverage experience. And also one that could very easily have been relegated to simply where it originated. But it has taken the world by storm. And I kind of love that because, well, first of all, people say, oh, well, I only like the traditional style. And I'm like, I don't even know what traditional bubble tea is anymore because so many different cultures claim it as their own and have their own spin on it. But the funny thing is that, like, what's wrong with us all enjoying bubble tea? Nothing. There are many people that I meet who are like, oh, I hate bubble tea. And often my question when I hear someone say that is, have you tried it? And they'll be like, well, no, but I know I wouldn't like it.
Mm.
Like, how do you know? How do you know you wouldn't like it? Well, I think it's disgusting is often I've had someone say that. And I'm like, well, what part of that do you drink juice? Do you drink iced tea? Do you drink, do you like brown sugar? Like you can start to break it down by ingredient, recognizing this human probably has eaten and quite likes all of the ingredients, but it's the formulation and the difference of putting them together that just immediately makes them not like it. Well, I don't know. I think try the bubble tea. Like, what's the worst that can happen? That you don't like it and you now know you don't like it? Or that you're just aware that, you know what? I've never exposed myself to something like that. I've never sucked up a straw that was wide enough to fit a big globule of tapioca, right? Like, it's laughable. And
Yeah.
yet, this is the opportunity. And so I say performative DEI, this checks and balances. We got to have a certain amount of difference in order for us to meet quotas. Great, do that. But let's not stop there. Let's not continue to say, okay, this is a standard. No, let's have that standard transform the way we think and innovate and create and problem solve at a whole other level that first and foremost addresses our global marketplace far better because we're not just thinking about our little comfort zone.
Yeah, I love what you said there, especially around, the bubble tea. Because bubble tea, whether you've tried it or not tried it, has a lot to do with perspective. What are you
Yes.
seeing? What are you not seeing?
Right.
And I always liked when I first learned from someone about equity that they talked about the lenses through which you see the world. If you put on a different lens, you'll see the world differently. Early in my career, I worked with a significant number of people with disabilities. And that lens has helped me see every sidewalk since I was
Very differently.
18
Right.
differently.
Mhm.
How do wheelchairs get up and down these? I can't not see it because it was so much a part of my world, whether it
Right.
was wheelchairs or walkers or even a baby carriage.
Mhm.
Has it been thought from a project point of view in how it was created?
Right.
And when we add that extra lens, it changes how we see the world.
Mhm.
And when we can do that non-performatively,
Yes.
when we look around and go, hey, that really is a steep ledge
Mhm.
to try and move up.
Yep.
Could you push a baby carriage up that? Could you get a wheelchair up that? That changes everything
Yeah.
because it's not performative now.
No, exactly.
Now it's part of the thinking.
Yeah. Well, and I think, being an inclusive leader, regardless of what organization you work for and regardless of what their performative or non-performative DEI policies are, um, you know, it's not a sentence you recite to yourself. It's actually a choice that you consciously, individually make. And the choice is you do it publicly, you do it imperfectly, in my case, where you say
In
and
many
do
of our
and
cases.
you say and do things that are wrong, and when that feedback is received, you make apologies for it, but you do this consistently. Case in point, another thing that we do now, I think far more naturally than even when we started this podcast, is we use pronouns when addressing one another. And I think that was it continues to be a sticky thing for some individuals, but I think hopefully we've moved the needle there. And the point is it is that we will not presume to know anything about someone without allowing them first to inform us. That's a choice to honor and respect that human that brings something to you that you can't offer because you're not them. You don't speak like them, you don't think like them, you don't act like them, and that doesn't make them anything other than unknown to you. And in the how do I become known to others is we create space to do that. And we ask someone, what are your pronouns? And even though in my mind, I may decide that they are a certain gender or non-gender and want to use pronouns that I feel are appropriate, how arrogant of me to assume. And also, um, how does that help me as a professional to assume someone's pronouns and start using them when, if in the environment of project management, I'm trying to create an environment where interest holders respect me and they feel as though they are seen and valued by me, then I don't right out the gate misgender them, use a pronoun that I think is right. And then, for that matter, when they ask or reflect back to me that I've gotten it wrong, I don't get frustrated. I don't go, well, how would I know? No, you just say, oh, I'm so sorry. And then we change it. And now we use the pronoun they've said. Like, it's just, there's a level of arrogance in our professionalism that I am so intolerant of. And I think that's where the I don't tolerate performative DEI comes from, because I don't believe we should tolerate this level of arrogance in ourselves as professionals. I think we need to be far more humble and recognize, like the old adage, when we assume we make an ass out of you and me, let's stop assuming things. Let's stop assuming we went to Harvard or it mattering that we did. Let's ask those that went to Stanford in the example you gave. Talk to me about Stanford. I've never been there. What's it like? Like, how does that harm us? It doesn't create anything than opportunity to expand our worldview and to wisely create space for others to be seen and heard and contribute.
Well, I want to say thank you because this topic has obviously been near and dear to our hearts.
Yes.
Going back to the first episode, some
Yeah.
55 episodes ago.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Amazing.
And I can't wait until we hit 100 episodes and find out what AI thinks of our pronouns.
I was just going to say, I'm like, who knows where we'll be
We
in
have
another
no idea.
50 or 45 episodes. Anyway, thanks, Martin.
Thank you so much.